Alright, hello everybody and welcome to my first flight in the PMDG 737 Flight Series. Today we'll be doing some quick route planning. I'll show you how to set up a sit and a star, and then we're going to go ahead and do some weather forecasting so we're sure that we know what's ahead of us. Then we'll do a quick cold and dark startup as well as an ILS Autoland. It's going to be a domestic flight inside of Norway from Oslo Gardermoen to Bergen on the west coast of Norway. The flight route today is going to be starting here in Oslo, and I'll go more into details later, but we'll be following departure here, then we catch up with our route, then into the arrival and land in Bergen. The current runways is going to be runway 19R from Oslo, and then we'll land on the ILS on runway 17 in Bergen. We're currently at gate 16, and there's some frequencies here which we need to take note of. The first is the ATIS, which is 126.12, so make sure you write that down so we can get the current weather. Then we'll do a taxi all the way to holding point A9, and then we'll take off using runway 19R, follow the departure, the ATLAB 7D departure. You can see these waypoints here. Take a note of them because we need them when we check the route later on the legs page. From ATLAB, we transition into our route, and then we fly to Pizur. We'll be transitioning into the arrival in Bergen, and all of these waypoints you can see here are making sure that we're lining up and track with the airport and getting the right altitude and speed. Jilva will be a transition into the runway, and you can see these charts here show you the current glide scope and how to actually plan your arrival here, so you can do a proper landing. Once we're landing, we'll be getting over to these gates. Let's take a quick look at the weather forecast. As you can see, we're having some fronts here over the UK, and moving on with the time, you can see that they're moving towards the west coast of Norway, which is where our destination city is. These fronts are catching up with each other. So here's a cold front, and the warm front is in the front, and the cold one is in the back. But as you can see, the distance between them are narrowing, so it's catching up. So as you can see, here we're having some clouds and some rain behind those mountains on the west coast. Then you can see the front over here and some weather that's left behind that. We're having some of them in Oslo, but it seems that the weather in Bergen can be pretty weird. The temperatures in Oslo is around 3 degrees of Celsius, and Bergen it's around 5 degrees of Celsius. And Oslo is having a southwestern wind of around 6 knots, and Bergen is having winds 12 knots from same southwest. So let's quickly go through the METAR for Oslo. We're having variable winds of 60 degrees of 6 knots. Visibility is good. Few clouds at 1000 and overcast at 190. Looking at Bergen, we're having winds at 12 knots from 230. Good visibility. Broken clouds at 1000, 9000, 14,000 and 19,000, and heavy rain. The configuration for takeoff is going to be flap 1 with a double D rate. The VREF speeds, take a note of them. We'll get back to this later. Landing flaps 40, and our current amount of fuel is going to be 4,805 kilos. As you can see on the time for departure here, we don't have a lot of time, so we need to make sure that we get this cockpit all set up, and so we can depart and do the pushback on time. So here we are in a cold and dark cockpit, and the first thing that we need to do here is to go ahead and get some power. You can do this by closing this lid up there. You can see the batteries are now discharging, and let's go ahead and do this real quick. Make sure that the pumps are off and the ELEC switches are in the off position. Bleed air needs to be off, and then turn off the packs as well. The gears are down. You can see those 3 green lights there. And let's set the parking brake. Also the fire test. can see that it's all working. Overheat detected, all good. Can go ahead and turn that one off. Next, we need to go ahead and connect the ground connections. So just set the ground power and the air condition so we can get some preconditioned air from the airport. Make sure that we're currently connected and then hit the ground power switch to hook us all up. Let's go ahead and align the plane. So let's put both of these into nav and make sure they're aligning. Make sure that both of these switches are in the on position. You can see that by switching them, you modify the required AC amps. Keep them in the on position for now. Okay, arm the emergency exit lights. And then let's go ahead and set our initial position as well as closing the front door. I saw that it was open on the chart above us in the overhead panel. Let's go ahead and click FMC, then push in it. Then let's first start with setting our reference airport and gate 16. And then next page, then copy the current GPS location and paste it into our IRS position so we can go ahead with the setup. Alright, make sure that the flaps are all up and the lever is in the up position. Let's double check the wheel well fire test. You can see that the wheel well light is illuminated, all good. Okay, moving on, let's get some lights on. We're going to need the wheel well lights on, the position lights to steady, and some wing lights. And then let's go ahead and get the catering guys working. So request catering service. They will need some doors open, so let's go to the computer here and let's see menu, FSX doors, then open the forward and aft right doors. Go to FSX again and load in some fuel. So as you remember from the dispatch papers, we needed some fuel, 4,805, so let's go ahead and plot that in here. There we go. And some payload. You can put in the passengers yourself, or you can just paste in the zero fuel weight, so 57.3. Alright, there we go. As I said, you can go ahead and set the amount of passengers yourself by modifying first class and the coach class. But setting the zero fuel weight will do this automatically, as well as balancing the forward cargo and the aft cargo so they follow your needs. And let's check the amount of time left for our alignment to be finished. Let's wait for the countdown. So let's see, 11 minutes. Let's go ahead and request refueling as well. Alright, we got 11 minutes to get this flight prepared so we can do the pushback on time. Let's start with the flaps annunciator. Everything's working. We're aligning. The service interphone needs to be in the off position. Engine reverse lights extinguished. EAC on and armed. Crew oxygen good. Passenger oxygen switch normal. Flight recorder is working. Clackers and stall warning test all working. The PCE light is extinguished. Alright, moving down to the overhead panel. Let's do this in a waterfall flow. Starting with this panel here. Yaw damper on. Navigation all in normal. These switches are in auto and normal. Valve in transition and valve is open. Closing in transition and closed. All is working. Fuel pumps all working. Everything is normal. Standby power all good. Transition all good. Make sure the equipment cooling is normal. Let's turn on the past seatbelt sight. Window heat all in the on position. Let's go ahead and do the probe test and the overheat test on the window heaters. Turn it off and then turn it back on. Probes off, anti-ice all working. Hydraulics pumps all normal. Voice recorder all good, raised. We got pressure. Make sure that we have enough temperature so it's good enough for the people when they're boarding. Let's set the initial cruise, flight level 300, and our landing altitude is 150. Alright, testing these, all is good. Let's put it back to auto. Ignition to R, just put it to the opposite side. Okay, and do the overheat test as well, all good. Let's close some doors. Close and close. It should be good. Oxygen, working. Continuous flow, working. Okay, let's see. Let's go ahead and go to the FMC here and make sure our route is configured. So we'll go ahead and put ENGM to origin. And let's load the file that we exported from PFPX. This is just the file name. Put it into co-route. And let's go to the legs page to make sure that it all matches. So ATLAB, ActiveSky and PISUR, which is what we planned in PFPX, excluding the arrival and departure. Let's go ahead and set up the departures. So 19R and Atlas 7D for as the SID. And then for the arrival in Bergen, we'll be using runway 17, transition Jilba from PISU to N. So let's go ahead and check this one out by using something called the step function. Just go and set this knob into map. Then you get a new menu here on the LSK called steps. You can step through the route. Here we had ATLAB, and then our arrival. And then we're lining up and landing on the runway, so everything seems to be good. Let's put this back to normal and then activate this route. So hit activate and then execute. Our route is now active. Okay, so this seems good. Let's go ahead and set up this plane. So init ref, let's load the zero fuel weight from the system here using the automatic function. The reserve fuel is 1000 today, so make sure that you write this one 1.0 and cost index 30. The cruise will be flight level 300. You can get this from the dispatch paper together with the cruise wind and the top of climb temperature as well as the transition altitude. So our initial cruise will be FL 300. And then let's see so this will be our cruise, very short one, but you can see that the winds is 217.35, so just remember that one. And the temperature at our top of climb 54 from the climb value here. Let's plug in these values, so 218/35, or was it 17? I'll check later. 54, negative 54. And the transition altitude was 7,000. I found this one from the charts. You can see the value here on the runway, 19R. Transition altitude is 7,000. Execute. Alright, let's correct the wind. It was 217.35. Doesn't matter, but let's just be exact. Let's go ahead and go to the N1 limits. We're doing flaps 1 today, double D rate with assumed temperature of 40, and then we're having these VREF speeds. So let's go ahead and plug in the double D rate here and a normal climb. Oh yeah, let's set the assumed temperature. Let's set the climb back to 1, following the papers. Flaps 1 today, center of gravity, get it automatically. And the VREF was 43, 44 and 48. All good. We've got 3 minutes left until the alignment is done. Let's just go ahead with the flight deck preparation here. Let's set these to VOR. You can see it's indicated in the instruments there. And what else? Yeah, let's get the ATIS. So it was 12612. and hit transfer to make it active. We want to get the winds 8 knots, and then the altimeter settings. $28.85. Let's plot that in on our EFIS here. As you can see, the current value is 29.92. You can rotate this knob all the way down to 28.85. The course of the runway is 193. And let's set this up on both sides, as well as the heading, just to make sure. You can never be too careful. Anything can happen during a takeoff. Then let's set the speed to our V2 speed, which was 148. You can see that it's 148 here. Make sure it's all set, and the flight director should be on. Okay, still not aligned. Let's see how much time. Oh yeah, it just finished as we moved to look here. So that means that we should have some numbers on the IRS. So let's go to the position in it, and then next page you can see that they're both having numbers, so all good. You can then go ahead and enable VNav and LNav. Okay, now that we're aligned, I think that we're all ready for boarding. So let's go ahead and call the ground service and request the boarding. Alright, boarding requested. Let's go ahead and open some doors. So menu, FS actions, doors, then open both the entry doors and the cargo doors. There we go. Okay, let's test some lights. Make sure we don't have any broken light bulbs. It would be sad to think a system isn't working just because the light isn't illuminated. Everything seems good. Everything seems good. There we go. Let's go ahead and turn off the test. Test the autopilot annunciators, all good. Display units, all good. And the main panel display units, all good. Let's make sure that these are in a normal position. The clock is set, we have 1 minute. Nose wheel steering should be in a normal position. 45 on the speed tape, heading of 195, matches this one as well. And let's go ahead and set the altitude as well. I noticed that it was still at 10,000, it should be 7,000 as this is our initial transition altitude. So 148 on the VRF, altimeter is set. Our route is active. First waypoint. Okay, 195, 195. Pressure. Everything seems to be matching. And this compass is 195 because we're having south down there on the S. Okay, passengers are boarded. Let's go ahead and make sure N1 is in auto. VREF speeds is in auto. Auto brake should be set to RTO. Reset the fuel flow. Make sure it's zeroed out down there. Everything good. Let's put up the engine display so we can see all of our numbers when we're doing the startup. Low oil pressure, everything is good. Flaps are up. Double D rate, assume temperature of 40. Oil quantity 100. Okay, let's see. Let's set up our frequencies. We already did 80s, so let's go ahead and set the ILS frequency for our takeoff. So that was 111.3. Looking at the chart, let's make it active. You can see it here, 111.3. for runway 19R in Oslo Gardermoen. You can see that ILS is now visible on our instrument panel here. Okay, everything should be set up properly down here right now for our takeoff. Let's continue here. Let's test the thrust. Just move these forward on the joystick. Speed brake. And we should have these switches in the cutoff position. Stab trim. Alright. Squibs. Boarding is completed. Perfect. Let's go ahead and close those doors. Close. Close. And let's start the FS CabinCrew plugin just to make some realism.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board. Please stow your carry-on luggage under the seat in front of you or in an overhead bin and take your seats as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Cargo fire test. It's working. Let's do the test here as well. Runs, rudder, everything is set. Step train normal. Let's just check the test here. Make sure it's running.
Test. Pass.
And all good. Let's do the ground proximity test as well. Make sure that we don't crash in the terrain. I know there's going to be some terrain at our destination.
Wind shear.
Right, let's go ahead and turn on our fuel pumps. We'll be needing them very shortly. APU on. And since it's on, we need to turn on the anti-collision light as well. Bleed air is off. Let's put this into APU gen. You see we're having a low oil pressure light illuminated. That's normal. Let's wait for the EGT to rise. It's going to be rising up to around 7. Okay, needle is rising. There we go, 7. And then it should be stabilizing at 4. We should get a number on the frequency up here. It should be around 400 once we get some power from the APU, and this light should be illuminated. So let's see, 4 and stable. There we go, 400. We got power, so let's switch the power source to the APU generated power. Let's turn on the stopwatch here. We need to wait 1 minute before we can turn on the APU bleed. So let's, while we're waiting, let's go ahead and set the ground connection wheel chocks to removed. Let's put this into progress page. All doors are closed. Just waiting for that 1 minute to pass by so we can turn on the APU bleed. Let's go ahead and request the pushback. Nose should be going to the right since we'll be taxiing to runway 19R. Okay, we're closing to 1 minute now. So let's see, 10 seconds left. Can just go ahead and do it now. 5 seconds, so should be all good. APU bleed on. Let's check the pressure. The needles are moving up, and then it should be stabilizing down at 10, which means that we got enough pressure to do our engine starts. GSX is all getting ready for their pushback, so let's just wait for them to let us know that we can release the parking brake.
Departure check completed. Live has been inserted.
Alright.
Release parking brake.
Released.
Ladies and gentlemen,
We also need to set the trim. I'll do that once we're done with the pushback, because we need to start our engines now. Let's put this one to ground, engine number 2.
Insert the metal fitting
Just
one
see,
into the
let's
other
see.
and tighten
I
by
need
pulling on the
to
loose
get
end
a
of the
proper
strap.
camera position so you
Release
can
your
see all
seatbelt
the
lifting
values
upper
here.
portion of the buckle.
Let's see.
We suggest that you keep your seatbelt fastened throughout the flight as we may experience turbulence.
Let's just open these panels.
There are several emergency exits on this aircraft. Please take a
There we
few
go.
moments now to locate your
We're looking at N2, we're waiting for N2 25
behind you.
and 25, so let's add some fuel. The fuel flow should increase.
Doors can be opened by moving the handle
All
in
good.
the direction
Waiting
of the
for
arrow.
oil pressure and oil
Each door
temperature
is
to
equipped with an
rise.
inflatable slide
And
which may also be
EGT
detached and used as a
is
life raft.
rising.
Oxygen
N1
and
is
the air
spinning.
pressure are always
Start
being
valve
monitored.
is
In the
open
event of a
on engine
decompression,
2.
an oxygen mask will
And
automatically
the low
appear in front of you.
oil pressure light
To
has
start to close
extinguished.
oxygen, pull the mask
Waiting
towards
for
you. Place it firmly
N2
over your nose
to
and mouth.
reach
Secure the elastic band
56.
behind your head and breathe normally. Although the bag will not
Here to
deflate,
click.
oxygen is flowing. If you are traveling with a
Right,
child or someone who
and
requires
then
assistance,
let's
secure
get
your mask first
EGT.
and then
Do you
assist
see
the
this
other
red
person.
line there?
Keep
Needs
your
to
mask
be
on until a uniformed crew member
removed.
advises you to remove
So
it.
EGT
A
is
life
rolling
vest
back
is located under
and
your seat.
stabilizing.
When instructed to do so,
We
open
have
the plastic
N1
pouch
of
and
20.
remove the vest.
All
Slip
good.
it over your head.
Engine 2
pass the
is
straps
running. Let's
around
do
your
engine 1
waist
as well.
and adjust it at the front.
So
To inflate the
ground,
vest, pull firmly on
waiting
the red
for
cord only when leaving
N2.
the aircraft.
There we go.
You can also blow into the mouthpieces on either side of the vest.
And
Electronic
start valve is
devices like
open.
calculators, CD
Low oil
players,
pressure
laptop
is good.
computers may be
You
used
should
when
really
the
have your
seatbelt
hands
ties
on
off or
the
when
cutoff
permitted by
switch
the
here
crew.
in case you get a
Mobile
hot start,
telephones,
but
remote control toys, or any electronic device operating with an antenna
see,
must be
that's
turned off at all
at
times.
25.
We remind you that this
Keep
is
your
a
hands on the
non-smoking
cutoff
flight.
switch.
Tampering with, disabling, or destroying the smoke detectors
See,
located in
EGT
the
is
laboratory
rising.
is prohibited by law. You will find this and all other safety information on our
See
website.
the differences in the engines here. Very well modeled.
If you have any questions, please
Right.
don't hesitate to ask one of our crew members.
Waiting
We
for
wish you all an
N2
enjoyable flight.
to reach 56. EGT is rising. Alright. And there we go. EGT. Start valve is closed. EGT is rolling back and stabilizing. Waiting for that red line to disappear. Okay, both engines are now running and should be producing power, so we should go ahead and switch our power source to reduce the fuel usage. But first let's set up this panel. So probe heat on, hydraulic pumps both set to on, the low pressure has been extinguished on both, all good. Okay, we will need to set some lights. We can turn them off and then make sure that we're having power from the engines and then turn off the APU. Let's go ahead and set up the taxi lights and then of course set the parking brake. Then turn off the wheel well and wing lights. Won't be needing them. Let's see what power do we have. APU is still producing power, generator is producing, generator 2 is producing, all good. So before we're turning this one off we need to change the power source to the generator, so generator 1 and 2. APU is still producing power, so let's turn it off. Oops, there we go. It's now off. Packs, auto. See that everything is good here. APU bleed off. Okay, cylinder taxi recall.
Right, it's clear.
We got some fuel. The numbers are all good. Let's set the trim. Should be 5.29 if I remember correctly. Let's see. Somewhere around there, I could see it on the pop-up, but I'm not sure if it's getting caught on the video. Let's see here, 5.29, then 5.29, all good. Flaps should be set to 1, so let's wait for the green light. now orange. Set engines to continuous. RTO is set, everything is okay. Let's test the flight controls. Ailerons working, elevators working, and then rudder. All good. Let's release the parking brake and start the taxiing all the way to runway 19R. Flight path, vector. You can decide if you want this on or not, but I like to keep it on during takeoffs. Here we are, rolling. Let's try to keep the speeds between 15 and 30 knots on the straights and around 10 while turning. Let's see here, trying to get this track IR into position. Oops. There we go, resetting the view. That's good enough. I should be taxiing, not fiddling with this equipment. See, the flaps are now all green. Everything is good. Nice and steady. Coming up to November. Let's take a right here. Make sure that everything is clear. No other planes. Let's see if we can try to hug that center line. I'm a little bit off. Fiddling here with my track IR to make sure it's working. You should try to overshoot the line a little bit when you're turning, but close enough. Let's try to hug that center line. Come on, there we go. I'm gonna speed ahead a little bit here, so you don't need to watch the entire taxi route. It's just going straight forward. Just try to keep that center line as good as possible, and you're good. And watch your speed. Let's hold in point A7, then A9 coming up. Checking out the horizon, can't see any other planes. We're alone here, but never hurts to get the habit of checking. Everything seems to be clear in the sky ahead of us. Before we're rolling on the runway, we need to turn some knobs and switches to set everything up correctly. Let's just go ahead and stop at the line here. There we go. Runway 19R. Here we are. Still clear. Set the park brake. Oops. There we go. Landing lights. Runway lights. Taxi off. Position light to strobe and steady. Air conditioning, everything is good. Yeah, let's click attend as well. Make the flight attendants know that we're now going on the runway. Fasten seatbelts is still in auto. Terrain on. Set our transponder to TARA. Make sure that we're transmitting data, so the ATC, among others, can see us while we're flying. We'll be using the heads-up display here, so I'm just lowering this one here. And as we roll on the runway, you will see the center line of the runway lining up in the middle of the display here. Let's see. And let's start our turn. Then align ourselves into the center of the runway. Let's try to get that little line there now. Let's put it in the center so it traverses the little circle there. Alright, auto throttle on. The takeoff will be rather simple. Let's use the rudders to keep our airplane as centered to the runway as possible. We're setting the N1 to around 40, let it stabilize, and then we initiate toga and do our takeoff. As you can see down there, we're having a turn coming up right after the takeoff, so we need to make sure that we follow our path. Alright, there we go, 40, and stabilizing, all good, toga. Then use rudder to keep the airplane as centered as possible, compensate for the winds, and watch the speed. We're at 70, waiting for V1, VR, where we'll be doing the rotating, and then V2. So first one is coming up.
V1, rotate.
Rotate.
V2.
Come on, come on. There we go. And we're climbing. Positive rate of climb. Let's retract the gears.
Ladies and gentlemen, please keep your
What we're trying to do is to keep that little circle inside of the big circle. Keep the bird in the cage, and you'll get to your destination. You can fly manually all the way. We're not going to do that. We'll switch to autopilot. Let's see, let's just turn here, fly the plane. You can see the line that's kind of vertically dropping up and down from the wings of our airplane there. That's how we are in relative to our target speed. So we're now currently way below the target speed, but we're increasing. Make sure the flaps are up. Departing from Oslo. Slowly climbing. There's going to be another turn coming up. This is now our departure to ATLAP 7B departure. Right, turning for our next waypoint on our route. Having a little bit of a headwind now. And closing up to our transition altitude now. Just go ahead and enable the autopilot. Let's make sure that let's increase the altitude to our initial climb, 30,000. Okay. Our legs. That's all our way to our transition. Then our route into Petter then we'll land in Bergen. Everything is set up. Let's set the landing gear to off and auto brake to off. Also go ahead and see, we need to set the STD here. There we go. Tent. Lights can come off. All good. Starters 2 off. All good on the, a little bit warm in the middle here. That's better. Let's check our generators. Transformer rectifier 1, all good. 22 and 13, all normal. Zoom out a little bit. You can see the entire route almost. Fuel still looking good, no leakage. Our cruise will be very short, so we should do as much as possible of the preparation before we were even there. So let's make sure that the seatbelt is in auto. Zoom out a little bit. That's the top of climb. That's when we're starting our cruise. You can see the progress page here. It's indicating everything. ATLAP is coming up rapidly. And our route. 10 Zulu time, we're at ATLAP, and then we'll be landing. Make sure you note the fuel quantity. Pay attention to the fuel usage as you're flying and compare it with your dispatch papers. Okay. Final waypoint coming up, then we're at ATLAP. Make sure all the values are normal. Just pay attention to them sometimes in case something happens. Generators working. We're all good. You can do a test here before you start, but I didn't do that today. Hydraulic pumps are all good. Air conditioning, temperatures, everything is good. ATLAP coming up, as well as our top of climb. We're currently at ATLAP here, and then we'll continue our route all the way to Pesir. We'll be arriving in Bergen on runway 17 from Gilva. And the 109.9 is the ILS frequency, so we can go ahead and program that. Uh, 9.9. Let's do it on both sides because we're doing an automated ILS approach today, with landing with the autopilot on, and it needs to have the frequencies on the ILS runway set in both. You can see the IMC A111 is set there, You can also go ahead and set the runway details. So the elevation is 166. Let's see. Elevation 166, and the length. Let's see the chart. Let's program the length of the runway. There we go, and enter. We're all set up for our landing. And we're having a 3-degree descent rate here, so minus 3.0. That's matching our papers. So on this chart here, you can see the direction of the runway, which is 170. We're having a 3-degree descent rate. You can also see the terrains around the airport, indicated by 55, 53, 33, as well as the decision height. So make sure you take a note of all of these numbers. We can prepare our flight deck for landing. At this point, we're rapidly closing our top of climb. Let's also set the direction for our landing, which was 170. Do it on both sides because we need them for our ILS Autoland today. We're using both of the autopilots, so we need to set both sides. Alright, top of climb coming up. We're doing our very short cruise. Set the ILS for landing as well. We don't want to be fiddling with these numbers while we're doing our approach or landing in case of heavy weather. We'll soon find out. Let's see the cruise. To top of the descent, it's gonna be 33 nautical miles. And the wind is quite spot on to the forecast. You can also go ahead and do a forecast here of our descent. I won't have time to plot in these numbers now, but I usually like to do that. Today we probably should have been using anti-ice, so let's go ahead and turn those on for a while. Just make sure that we don't have any ice, or if we do, we can get rid of that. We can just turn it off again, but this is basically how anti-icing works. You should turn them on when you're in visible moist or when it's very cold. And by the way, if you were wondering where I'm getting all these nice charts from, it's from Navigraph.com. I'm having a subscription there, so I can get all the latest cycles of the FMS data, as well as any chart. You can just go ahead and do a lookup on a specific airport, and I will get the graphs. There's also an iPad app for that, so you can use the iPad or a Windows computer and find the charts that I need. So top of descent is now approaching. The auto throttle will put our thrust into idle, into something called retard mode. But before we get there, let's turn down the altitude to our first restriction here. There we go. Set the flaps to 40. That's our landing. ILS can see here 109.9 and then 170. So everything is correct. on both sides. Also, you can hear the engines idling. That's the retard mode kicking in. We're now starting our descent, and the thrust levels are going back to the idle position. That's an automated system, but you should make sure that you still do the same on your joystick. It's always good to check your values on your engines and your fuel quantity to make sure everything is in order while you're cruising and during your descent. If you have time, let's set the speed brake to 2 for our landing. You can see that we're now descending fast. Everything is in null position. Let's set the 80s as well. As I mentioned earlier, you don't want to be fiddling with these numbers or clicking these buttons when you're stressing in the descent. Turn on the fasten seatbelt. There's some turbulence. You see it by the shaking here. Some heavy clouds coming up here. It's going to be very interesting. Make sure that our numbers are still good. Everything seems to be in order. And all good. Temperature still fine. Let's check our fuel here. Let's do a burn check. We're having 3.0 in the next one and 2.8 when landing. So looking at these charts here, we're a little bit off, but it's not much, so everything is good. 3.1 here and 2.9, and we're off by 0.1, so that's good. You can also see the time there, the estimated time of arrival. Two panels here. Your co-pilot is having one. But since you're the only guy in here right now, you can use them both. You can set this one up for example, doing the approach. So you can see how we're lined up with the runway. You can just turn the knobs on the right side FA system here and set it up the way you want. You can see the thunderstorm clouds ahead of us. This huge tower of clouds. Okay, let's just check our approach here. We're going all the way down through these waypoints. Then we'll hit Gilva, where we transition into the final. We're doing a descent here, and just making sure that we're having the minimum set, or the decision altitude, which is where you need to decide if you're going to be landing or not. And alright, it is coming in. We're having some winds, 230 at 12. good visibility, light rain, severe thunderstorms, and the altimeter 2891. Let's turn this one off now. Okay, thunderstorms. That's interesting. We'll see how bad it gets. Severe thunderstorms. Okay, STD, that's not right. Okay, I forgot to set our descent transition altitude, so let's go ahead and do that now. Fell. Okay, 7,000. There we go. That's our transition level for our approach to Bergen. These airplanes can handle quite heavy weather, but you should always be prepared to find an other destination, an alternate. I didn't program an alternate for this flight. I'll teach you how to do that in the next one. But we need to make sure that we're ready to cancel the landing and do a go around. That means that we'll be trying to turn our engines back on to full power and do a climb. You can see the thunderstorms blinking ahead of us. Let's go ahead and set the decision height. This is the minimums. If you don't see the runway at this point, do a go around or go to your alternate destination. For this airport, it's in Barrow 370. Just rotate this knob all the way to get Barrow 370 in the FD. We should also set the altimeter at this point, now that we got some time on our hand. So just rotate the same knob here till you get 2891. In the approach, so always try to stay ahead of the plane. My focus will be to make sure that I'm within the speed limits, so 220, and also I'm having the correct altitude. The autopilot will do a lot of these things for me, but you need to pay attention because sometimes things happen. Let's reduce our altitude to the next waypoint, 6,000. It says drag required at times. Well, just need to pay attention to make sure that we're within the speed limits. You don't want to be descending too fast because you won't be able to brake in time for the runway. And the 737-800 is very heavy. Let's spend a few seconds on the ILS Autoland. First, we set both of the nav radios to the runway ILS frequency. Then we set the course knobs on both sides of the NCP to the runway heading. Once we're closing, we're engaged the localizer. Once that's engaged, we'll go ahead and turn on the approach mode once we see the diamonds for our kaleidoscope, and then we need to enable both of the CMD A and B. Just making sure that we have all the data we need while doing the final. There we go. Values seem to be correct. Anti-ice should be on. We're invisible moist. Should have been on a while actually, but all good. turn on some lights. So landing lights on. Now we're doing the turns on our star before we get into the Jilva transition into our final. Let's put on some more lights. I like to have lights on my plane. Lights are cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start our descent. Please make sure your seat backs and tray tables are in a full upright position.
We're below 10,000.
Make sure your seatbelt is securely fastened and all carry-on luggage is stowed under the seat or in the
Still
overhead
pretty
bin.
good on speed.
Please turn off all electronic devices until we are safely parked at the gate. Thank you.
Temperature, all good. We have pressure. Okay, we are now ready for our landing. Let's do a quick recall. Speed brake was set. Soon we'll be introducing some flaps and some gears. And then we'll do our landing. You can see the heavy clouds in front of us. Looking forward to get below them, but we need to be prepared for anything. We might get some wind shear because of the wind direction. And if that happens, we need to be ready for a go around. So I'm going to keep my thumb on the go around button at all times. Let's make sure our speed is within limits here. 220. So I said it's going fast now, but no worries, we will be able to brake and get back on path or on track with speed. Okay, coming up to our final turn before we're hitting Jilva, and then we'll turn into the direction of the runway. Just controlling the speed brakes and some flaps here. Flaps green. If we don't see the runway in time, we need to do go around as well. But we'll see. It is said that the visibility should be still good. We're quite high up. The forecast said that it should be clouds where we're currently flying, so everything is still in order. Right, let's pay attention to the speed again. We're now way over. We need to brake down, or else I'm gonna have to take in the flaps again. Within the operating limits of the flaps, so all good, but still high. Coming up for Jilva, 0.4 nautic miles. We need to be at 4,000. That's good, and speed of 220. Everything is still, or everything is now in order, finally. Let's try to keep it that way. You see some visibility down there, so I think that we're going to be good. But anything can happen, so let's just stay tuned. You can see ILS. Alright, we need to reset the altitude. Put back the VNAV. I forgot to click this one. waiting to get the localizer bar lock. It's all good. Let's go to approach. Jilba coming up. And then we're ready to transition into our final. And I also just enabled Command B, the second autopilot, to help me with the automated landing. Drag required after Jilva. We're still good with speed. I like to fly a little bit slower. For final, let's set it to approach mode. The co-pilot can see the normal view. There we go. It's all good.
2500.
I'm also out of memory, so I will need to do a quick reload, so everything loads correctly and I won't get any crashes. So there we go. We're back again on track. Let's make sure everything is still set up correctly. Looks like everything is back in order. And we can see the runway here. That triple line just by that lightning is our 3-degree descent rate. We want to try to keep the wings on or as close to that one as possible if we would be doing a manual landing here. You will still have the same instrument, just keep that bird in the cage as you're landing and you'll be fine. But I'll let the autopilot do the job today, even the flaring in the end. Just keeping the wings on a little below. We need to get down on path. The
1000.
indicators on the flight director, there's these diamonds on the right side and below the attitude indicator. That's our glide scope, so we need to make sure that we're between those as well. But that will be automatic if you can follow the heads-up display as well. So here we are, coming in. You can see the lights are looking good on the runway. And make sure that you're ready to do the takeoff go-around, especially now that we're at around the minimums here. See here, just double check that I set it. Yeah, it's all good. We can see the runway, so we're good. Let's go ahead with the landing. Alright, no wind shear. Let's pay attention. And
100.
getting down. This would be manual. It's very easy to start the flaring too early.
10.
Just have the stomach to wait. Then we're doing the flaring and wait for our wheels to just touch down softly. There we go. And then the reversers coming on. And braking. Oops, I forgot to use the rudders well enough to compensate for the winds. So I'm not completely in the center here, but that's okay. Not the best auto land. I like to land manually, but now you know how this works. Then you can just slowly taxi off the runway, and we'll set the flaps back to normal, and the auto brake and everything else, while we're waiting for the escort to our gate. Alright, vacating the runway. Now go ahead and stop the plane and let ground crew know that we're now ready for taxiing to a gate. So gate, let's do gate, looking at the chart here, gate 28, let's do follow me, and while we're waiting we can go ahead and set things back to normal. So flaps, let's set flaps all the way up and the auto brake to off. Then turn off the transponder. Turn off the lights and turn on the taxi light, as we'll be taxiing now. Logo lights can come off, wing lights can come off. Set the position lights to steady. Anti-ice can come off. Right, there is our escort, so we can just go ahead and start following that one. I'll be skipping the taxiing a little bit to keep this video shorter. It's already very long, but we're just basically following the lines and then following that little truck there to make sure that we find our gate. Hug the center line, a little bit off, that's okay. Then we'll be lining up with the gate. Try to get those two numbers to 00. I'm not an expert yet, but I'm trying. Let's see here. Alright, that's good enough. There we go. We can go ahead and cut the engine, so let's set the parking brake first. There we go. We also need to make sure that we get power once the engines are off. Let's turn off the window heat as well. And ground connections, wheel chocks set, ground power connected. Let's do the air conditioning as well. Sure that we're connected. We're now having power. Switch the power source to ground. Let's turn off that autopilot. Should have done that earlier. And cutting engines. Now we can let the passengers know that they can get ready to deboard the airplane. And let's request that the deboarding. There we go. Deboarding requested. I need some doors, so let's go ahead and do that. Doors open on the entry and cargo. Let's turn off the hydraulic pumps as well. Flaps can come off. Ventilation valve. Let's put it back to open. It will be. Let's just keep it closed. Wheel well can come on. Taxi lights off. Fuel pumps. Right, deboarding is now completed. Let's turn off this entire plane just for fun. Turn off the last fuel pump. We won't be needing any AP yaw damper off. Doors. Let's close everything except for the door that we'll be walking out. Let's turn off the RS as well. And emergency exit lights. Let's unpower. Let's just unpower everything just to see how it works.